Well, I think it's a mixed message to say the least. And indeed, there is a greater awareness of the fact that there's tremendous racial disparity, which is part of the American tradition going back some 400 years. What we have not seen is really systemic changes taking place. For example, today, the 25th was supposed to be the day that by which the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was supposed to be passed by Congress. That's not happening at this point. Structural change is not happening, and what we are seeing is increased number of revelations of just tremendous atrocities, thanks to video, that have taken place over the years. So it's a mixed message.
Um, has George Floyd become a symbol, though, of, as you said, racial disparity and police violence? And can that symbol endure?
Well, I think it would be probably not useful to just talk about George Floyd, of course, because there's just so many men and women, black men and women, and children who have suffered death by cop, as we call it here in the United States. And but he's symbolic of that, and that's very true. But what I'm concerned about is that if you're going to change a system, it takes a systemic effort. It's not just a couple of months of protests, a couple of years of protests. It's going to take a long time, and it remains to be seen whether we can sustain that effort. As I mentioned, a piece of legislation which would ban just something as simple as chokehold, for goodness sake, is having difficulty passing the United States Congress. So we have a long way to go.
What kind of path should the U.S. take, though? What kind of measures would you like to see implemented in the next few months and years? We talked about this U.S. Police reform bill, but also perhaps initiatives with regards to education?
Absolutely. I think education is a very important part of this. I'm glad you asked that question because, in medicine and science, they say, the first thing in order to solve a problem, or a disease, if you will, you have to acknowledge that there is a disease. We have a real problem in the United States, and the disease is called racism, systemic racism. And people really still resist that. Many of our white brothers and sisters resist saying that, which doesn't mean that every white person is racist, but it does say that we have a system that's been put in place over 400 years that definitely degrades black human beings. And so you have to start there. And if you can't accept that, then you can't really come up with credible change.
Many African Americans were disappointed with the performance of the first African American president, Barack Obama. Can President Joe Biden be the U.S. president who will make an actual difference with regards to, as you mentioned, racial disparity and racism in America?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Barack Obama, President Obama, was walking on thin ice throughout the 8 years of his presidency because, to the extent that he would try to acknowledge some of these same concerns, then there was a backlash coming from the white community that he was trying to somehow favor the black community over the white community. So he was walking on thin ice. Joe Biden obviously doesn't have that concern, and I've got to tell you, during his inaugural address on January 20th. President Biden was the first U.S. president in the history of the United States to acknowledge in these words that there is systemic racism in the United States. No president had ever said that before, and that's a big deal. But to your point, education is such an important part of it because once people understand what has been going on in this country over these last, again, 400 years, we then begin to find a way to address solutions, and that's what's so important. Education is a critical part of what's necessary at this point.